Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for another Women in Tech. I'm so excited to see all the people that joined us. I'm going to kick off just really quick. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Steph Flood. I'm part of the K-Tech board, and I am the committee chair for our Women in Tech group. So we are kind of just getting started with Women in Tech. We had a launch event in February, and then coronavirus hit, so we kind of slowed down for a little bit. We did one virtual happy hour last month, and this is one. So thank you for joining us. Over in the chat window, I did provide the link to our Women in Tech website. So it's part of the K-Tech website. So go out there and check it out. Share it with your friends. You can get more information about our mission for Women in Tech. You can find out more about our committees, and then you can keep an eye on it for upcoming events. We also have a Facebook page. We have a LinkedIn page. So please go out, check them out, and share them with your friends. I know I just had a really great conversation with a couple people at one of the tables. I hope you guys enjoyed the networking as well. But now we're going to jump into our main topic for this evening. I'm really excited to invite Julianna up to the stage, Julianna Presley. She planned this event. She's going to also bring a bunch of really talented folks up to the stage with her, focused on how do we best brand ourselves online. So what is our online image? What is our online brand? And how can we improve that? So again, thank you for coming, and I will turn it over to Julianna. Thanks.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you guys for coming. It looks like we have a pretty good turnout. As Steph said, this is our second virtual Women in Tech, K-Tech happy hour. So we're excited to be here, and I'm excited to introduce our panel. We're going to talk about building your brand in the tech community in Knoxville. That's our topic for tonight. And I feel like you can do that big or small. So whether that's something that you're already in the middle of and want to learn some examples and learn from experience about how to continue that, or whether you haven't even gotten started on that, I feel like there'll be something for everybody. So I'm really excited to introduce our panel. We have people on the panel that are talent professionals as well as technical professionals. So hopefully that will be a little bit of everything for everybody that's here. My name is Julianna Presley. As Steph said, I have been in recruiting talent in the Knoxville area for about 20 years. I work for Verana Health here in Knoxville, and I want to introduce the panel, but I'm not exactly sure. So I just need to say their names, Alex, and you'll pop them up. Is that right? Can you bring Kate Carter up to the stage? I'm not sure how that works.
Hey, I'm sorry. I was looking. I'm not here.
Oh, or you can bring Christine Jones up, or Christine Horwege up.
Yeah, I'll just bring them all up. How about that? And
yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Also, I will say that if you haven't used Lunchpool before, the way questions will be monitored is through the chat section where it says Q&A. So if you have questions for the panel, if you'll just type those over in the chat section under Q&A, then we will see those questions and we'll address them as we go through. There's my friends. Ashely, do you want to get first?
Sure, definitely. My name is Ashely Mullinax. I am a talent acquisition consultant for WarnerMedia. WarnerMedia is the company that brings you TV networks like TBS, TNT, HBO Max, coming soon, May 27th, and then Turner Sports Brands. So I work remotely out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And in years past, I have recruited technology professionals, but right now my specialty is focusing on content and creative realm of media. Another area that I am truly passionate about is employer branding, and of course, branding yourself through social media platforms.
All right. How about Christine H?
Good evening. My name is Christine Horwege. I currently work at Oak Ridge National Labs. I have also worked in Knoxville at TVA, Scripps Interactive, and I was also a Deloitte consultant. And I've worked in the IT risk and compliance policy realm for about 6 or 7 years directly now. And what I do is primarily look at IT roadmaps, new technologies in the marketplace, as well as looking at how you can reduce your risk and meet compliance requirements through your IT and technology systems and solutions.
Great, thank you, Christine. And we have two Christines on the panel tonight. So Christine Jones, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I think the last panel I was on had another Christine. I'm Christine Jones. I work at Discovery, formerly Scripps Networks. And before that, I worked at Jewelry Television. I'm a software engineering manager, and I also organize technical conferences, most recently B-Sides Knoxville.
All right. And Kate Carter?
I'm Kate Carter, and I work for Oak Ridge National Lab. I recruit for our computing and computational sciences director, which is going to be most of our computer science research type positions. We're the research lab, not the credit union. A lot of people confuse us. And so I've been recruiting in the Knoxville market since 2002, and I've been at OR now for 11 years now.
Thank you for being with us. Alex, I don't see Alla and Jess on the stage yet, so we can go ahead and get started, but we do need to bring them up too. So we do have two other panel members that we'll introduce when they get here. So the first part of our panel, I want to talk to both of the Christines. They're going to give you guys some examples and advice about just starting out. And so Christine H., could you talk a little bit about how you went about identifying a network when you started building your brand, and how you went about finding mentors that you could talk with and learn from?
Yes. So when I started to identify that I wanted to network and learn who the not only companies, but the players were in the Knoxville community. Some of the things that I did was, interesting enough, I've worked with almost every recruiter or recruiter team here. I find that if you reach out to the recruiters, they know who the players are. They can typically align you with who's hiring, what are the skills. And so that's one form of network that I engaged in. The second one was the conferences. So looking at CodeStock, looking at Knox Devs, and all of the different user groups that were in the Knoxville community. I currently belong to 3 of them. And a lot of them are focused on women in computing, the Information Security Association that's, again, global or national networks. And so as I did that, I was able to meet people who worked in my field, but also expanded out. So I was able to not only find the people that I could use when I didn't know something. So if it's a more technical and it's a software development, I typically reach out to that piece of my network, versus if I have a question or I'm looking for a technology in the more of the strategic road mapping, then a lot of times I'll reach out to others that I know who are using those new technology or developing them. And so learning those companies, not only in the area, but nationally, there's always seems to be a contact somewhere in Knoxville that knows somebody. Very diverse workforce. I also attended groups like ETech or the East Tennessee Economic Council over in Oak Ridge. And so finding those specific areas or times when people are getting together that have like minds or are looking to expand their network. And then, of course, the next piece was I would always share my network. So by sharing my network, I actually expanded twofold. So anytime I heard somebody was looking for, hey, I need somebody who's been in the, Scripps Interactive space or has been in the digital space. And I say, hey, I have 2 people I worked with, I can connect you with. But then they would connect. And so it becomes a compounding effect. And I found that for me, I was able to find those mentors through that network, but also my peer group that I could lean on when I had questions.
Yeah, that's helpful. And when you start to think about what activities that you're going to do and be a part of, whether it be K-Tech like this or different user groups or conferences that you're going to attend, Christine J., can you talk a little bit about how you go about deciding what you're going to invest your time in?
Sure. There's a lot of options in town. There's a lot. Knoxville has a very big tech community. So you could attend, back when we can go in person, you could attend a different user group every night, most weeks. So some of it is choosing, part of, what you want to grow in, what your emphasis is. And it may be something that is a little different from your current job. So I think it's good to find one where that's, your current strength and then where you want to grow. I generally, go to a couple user groups. Knox Devs has an umbrella group. That's a good way to find others. And also Slack groups. There's a lot of Slack groups around technology. I'm in various women in tech Slack groups. I'm in, the Knox Devs one. I'm in a leadership one for engineering leaders. And you can find, the places where you're getting something. And don't be afraid to quit one that's not working out. Like if you find one, you're like, I'm just not getting anything from this, or it's on Tuesday nights and I really hate going somewhere on Tuesday nights, or I really hate, logging onto that on Tuesdays. There's no reason not to try out a couple of new ones. So I think some of that is, making sure you're just getting something from it, whether that's meeting new people, which is a lot of times my goal, or whether it's, wanting to get those tech skills up on a specific, new area that you don't know as well. That can help you choose which ones.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I know one of the reasons, especially when my kids were little, that I didn't get as involved in building my brand through those kind of things was time. And so I know Christine H has done a great job because she's taught me how to commit to just go into things, even if it's just an hour here, it's an hour there. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 hours. It can be 30 minutes. And Christine, you just mentioned Slack groups, which seems like a great way to get involved in it, not be a big time commitment. Christine H, can you talk a little bit about how you manage your time around this part of, building your brand? It's not part of your job, but it's important.
So like everyone else, I work full time. I have 3 kids in school and they have activities, and I'm married. And so I have my spouse time as well as my me time. One of the things I think that I have to say, I didn't think of this process on my own, and I'll put it in the chat, but Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi taught me about how to maintain my circles and the different groups that, from an influencer, or where my biggest interests were. So where I find I'm most interested in, I live, is I'm big into Code Stock Academy and the Code 10, and working with the kids and bringing high school and middle school kids up with code. So one of the things, I spend a lot of time with that, whereas women in computing, I may go to once a quarter and try to hit those as my secondary circle. And then looking at other groups where I can network, whether it's more of a loose fitting group or I just touch points with maybe once a year. One of the things I do encourage, though, is that where Julianna talks about the 30 minutes, the key is to always keep your network alive and never look to people only when you need something. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned about networking is while I'm networking and always bringing up my brand and refreshing it with what is the new skills I've learned, who are the new people in my network, what does the market actually look for these days? One of the things I try to do is always touch base with people in one form or fashion, whether it's a card or I stop by at the table today and I say hi. And by keeping that network fresh and always touching people, when you do want, when you're looking for either a new position or you're looking to search for a friend to link them up with somebody, it's always good to keep that touch point or keep that network fresh so that you don't look like you're just coming to people when you need something. And it's always about, hey, I need a job, or I need a contact, or I need something. So I like to think about it that way. But I think the best advice I have is the Never Eat Alone book. It was a quick read, had the great idea of like how you had tiers of influence and where you actually had your passions. And I do, as I've spent more time with the Women in Tech group here, this will be my next passion going forward, because this has actually consolidated all of those groups that I used to touch individually. And now that we're bringing everyone together, I think this is a great opportunity again to invest in this group, where it's brought a lot of the local women and also the technology base into one place to actually talk.
That's true. That's very true. I agree with you. And that kind of takes me to our next question. I'm going to take this one, talking about a time that you stepped out of your comfort zone to build your brand. And actually, K-Tech was that for me. I had been wanting to build my brand in the tech community for a while. I had built it in my talent community pretty well, but I hadn't built it as much in the tech community. And so when K-Tech launched last summer, I thought that would be a great opportunity to do that. And so I stepped out of my comfort zone. I signed up for the launch event. There were 400 people there. You know, I went there by myself and, you know, got to know a few people through watching the speakers and all that. But I intentionally, you know, forced myself to stay after and introduce myself to Brandon Bruce, who was one of the founders of K-Tech, and tell Brandon a little bit about my network and my connections, and offer to help with as the organization was going to start growing. And I told him I would help with, you know, a women in tech group, or with membership, or just really wherever he could use, you know, somebody. And then from there, you know, followed up with him, and was able to be introduced to Steph and some of you, and you know, I'm now on this board with the committee for the women in tech the women in tech for K-Tech, and it's just been a great opportunity to build my brand. But I also what I've learned is that you have to be intentional about going to the things that are out there that you see, and there are a lot of things, and so it is great that K-Tech, that this group is consolidating a lot of those activities so that we have everything in one place. But just, I agree with Christine, showing up, and even just for a few minutes, and continuing to build your network and connect with your network is really important. So that's kind of an example of how I did that. I was hoping Christine J could talk a little bit about Knox Devs, because that is a different group, and it's a great one. And so could you talk a little bit about how you've built your brand through that organization, Christine?
Sure. So Knox Devs is a Slack group, and really close to it is also Codestock, which is a large general technology conference that a lot of us, I think, have gone to. If not, I do recommend. They had to cancel this year, but they're a good one to look at. Is there more generalized tech? Same with Knox Devs, where you get in there and you really get and start talking to other people. So Knoxville, you know, is a pretty big city, but a lot of people have lived here most of their lives. So they you know, sometimes it can be hard. I'm not from Knoxville, coming in and meeting people and, you know, learning what's going on. So things like Knox Devs and Codestock and now K-Tech have helped to kind of make those connections at other companies. So you can go and say, like, for instance, on this panel, you know, I work at Discovery. Ashely used to work at Discovery. Christine H used to work at Discovery. So now, you know, my network has grown just through attrition. So if you keep in touch with people like that through groups like Knox Devs or any of them, you can start to you know, learn more about what's out there, and that can help you learn like what user groups you want to go to, and then, you know, what other conferences you might like, or other events like this, because wherever you get that first foothold is where you kind of can grow from there. So I also, you know, we have a group that has met for dinner in technology once a month. So that's one place that I've met a lot of people. But Knox Devs kind of is a very general group. I'll throw a link in the chat for anyone who hasn't joined it. It's a general group. General groups in town are really good to meet people at various companies, because you can go and, similar to what Christine H mentioned, you know, find somebody that knows someone at the company. So like if you were looking for a job and you were saying, you know, I'm looking and I'm applying at ORNL, you know, I may not, you know, be at ORNL, but I may know somebody who works at ORNL. So that can help you, and that becomes not part of just building your brand, but also kind of finding that next thing, because it all kind of ties together. Building your brand is getting, you know, people to know who you are before you even apply, before you're looking for opportunities. So all of those type of groups can help, and you don't have, you know, I think some people get, you know, worried that they have to go and spend a huge amount of time. You don't have to be the organizer to get a huge amount of benefit from it. You can attend, you know, 1 out of every 4 or 5 events and still, you know, get a huge benefit for yourself.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing too about Codestock that I just want to point out is that a lot of you may have attended Codestock as an attendee, but it's also a great thing to look at, or just think about, and it's something you may have to think about for a year or two, but think about being on a panel at Codestock, maybe starting there, and then maybe being a speaker at Codestock. They take those requests several months prior to the event, and it's all on their webpage. But I think that's a great way to get involved. And you may think, think about something you're doing in your job or something that you're passionate about that you may want to share. The dev community is always interested in that. So think about that.
That's a great point. I should mention that. Yeah, I've spoken at CodeStock user groups. A lot of them have speaking. So that is a great way to get your brand, because you're suddenly, whatever you do as your job, you're probably the biggest expert on. So, if someone in this group, I know it was mentioned that there's a KTech Slack group. If someone here is interested in getting into public speaking in a technical space, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to give some advice on submitting topics.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, Christine H., you've sometimes it's hard when you're building your brand. I think one thing to think about when you're building your brand, if there is something that you're passionate about and you can find a way to build your brand through that, then that's really awesome. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes you can, but I know you've been able to do that. Could you talk for just a second about how you've been able to find something that you're passionate about and get involved in?
So it all started when my oldest daughter had signed up for Code 10, which used to be our competition in the area around coding. High school teams would put together a website and then they'd compete. I actually went to the very first one, met Caleb, and met some of the other local, I'd say, technical gurus. And as I was talking with them, and again, just started to understand what they were trying to do, realized that that's where my network could help them. And so that's where I used my network to really get in. I wasn't a big coder. I didn't build websites, but I understood IT and I understood education. And I said, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to build this in this area. And so I started to support them with a lot of the marketing and interacting or introducing each other and bringing that network around. And my passion for I would say the opportunity and the event, I think came through every time I talked to my network. So I started to get more people involved. And then I had an opportunity through Leadership Knoxville. I did Intro Knox. And I was able to actually work with Stephen Jenkins, who actually started or took over CodeStock Academy. And so he brought me in as one of the coordinators. And so I've been able to actually build that and then also introduce my network to it and bring some people in that have been able to help with that. I think that has helped me not only brand as an IT, but also to make sure that we have really good network and talent come to the CodeStock Academy and work with the kids. And I think, again, it's as you talk about it and you're passionate and you're excited, it gets other people engaged and excited as well.
Yeah, that's cool that you were able to do that. So we've talked about a lot of groups that you can be involved in, and we'll put those in the chat section so you can get involved in the Slacks and in the different groups. We've talked about CodeStock and KTech and Knox Devs. Another way that I know Kate Carter has done a great job of building her brand is to start committees or user groups or chapters of, she'll talk about it, but that's a whole different way to build your brand. And so I wanted, Kate, can you tell us a little bit about how you've assisted with forming a networking group or a chapter and how that's helped in building your brand? Because there's others that may be able to do the same at their companies.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about a women in computing group that, well, Julianna started with me several years back. I think it might be 9 years now. But so ORNL is kind of unique in that, we hire scientists and engineers from all over the world, and they come here and they don't know anyone. And oftentimes we struggle with the socializing after work, mainly because people that work at the lab live all over, and the lab is kind of stuck in the middle of the woods. And so there's just not a lot of after hour networking opportunities. And so there's also that disconnect. And so I think a lot of people get siloed and they struggle with building their own networks. So we actually started this women in computing group, and that really wasn't the primary driver. We were recruiters, and this actually wasn't even the primary driver either, but we were getting asked, of course, by our boss and hiring managers, how do we, diversify our teams and our applicant pools and all that. But the primary driver for me, and I always like to share this story because I think, I don't know, maybe it speaks to some, but I had just returned back from maternity leave with my first child, and I was struggling with just how to work in general. I felt very guilty about being at work and not putting enough time at home. And I knew that there were other women, professional women that were doing it and were successful at doing it. And I wanted to be around them. I wanted to learn how they were balancing all that. And so that was sort of the main driver. And then we just did like a call to all really to find out who are the women that work in computing at ORNL. We had a directorate at the time of around 500-ish. And a lot of it was just figuring out who they were. I mean, they were on teams that maybe they were the only one, the only female. And so we brought this group together, and it's kind of gone through, several chairs over the years, and they've had, different formats, speakers, socials. It's still thriving though, and it's become a great tool, especially for those when we're trying to attract people to ORNL, because we can talk about the network of women that we can introduce them to right away, and we've got male advocates in the group now, and I'm excited to be a little bit more involved with the K-Tech Women in Tech group, because most of my recruitment and networking is outside of this market. But as we're sitting in our homes, and it's also harder to just get people to relocate here now. I'm turning back to the Knoxville market, and I really want to work on that. And so I'd like to try to get our Women in Computing group more involved as well. So I'll push. I mean, Christine, of course, she's part of that, and she's awesome. So that's all.
And it's interesting. So I helped Kate start that group at ORNL, which is a large company. But then I also have worked since then for a smaller software engineering company that only had like 13 women in the company. But we started a Women in Tech, small group there. And we actually invited some of our customers to be involved, like women in tech that we knew like were part of our customer groups. So even if you work for a smaller company, you can still start a group like that. It doesn't have to be big. And you can also, if you work for a very large company, just start it within your team or your division, and it will grow, and it's pretty cool. So that's something to think about. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. So we're going to jump into the LinkedIn part of our presentation. And Jess Teske, I want her to talk for a second, because I see Jess on LinkedIn every day. She does a great job of keeping her brand going through LinkedIn. And so Jess, can you share just a few ideas around how you create a networking presence on LinkedIn and work and create your brand that way?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Jess Teske. I'm with Patriot Talent Solutions. We focus on IT staffing and services, veteran-owned small business. So I have taken it as part of one of my duties with the company to focus on the social media. So two different ideas that I had to share today. One of the things is specifically on LinkedIn is to engage yourself in a variety of ways. So whether it's group memberships like Women in Tech, Knoxville Tech Council, your university alumni groups that are out there, and then other user groups, all the user groups, Knox Devs that you guys are talking about, they're going to have a LinkedIn presence too. So it's nice to see that type of interaction in your feed. Another thing is following companies. So if I'm following Discovery, or if I'm following, ORNL, I can actually engage what's going on in the local network, and also do that on a regional and national scale. Following podcasts, they're typically on, very cutting edge things that are going on with podcasts. So you can actually follow those on LinkedIn as well. And then just doing your own posts. So your posts can be, as long as they're engaging in the community. And I think what you said, Christine H, earlier about making sure that you're not just getting something for yourself, but that you're giving back. So that's part of our social media strategy, is giving back to the community as well. So whether it's doing videos or posts, I'm a huge Harvard Business Review advocate. So I like to get articles and share them. Those generate a lot of cool discussions too. But I think that one of the biggest best practices on LinkedIn is when you're sharing content, if people interact and they comment, be sure to comment back, because it just takes a second and it ensures that people that you care about what they're talking about. So that's a best practice. And then something that you don't see a whole lot these days that was really popular years ago was endorsements. So actually doing endorsements on LinkedIn for current coworkers or former coworkers, that's kind of a nice surprise and a good way to engage in the LinkedIn environment. And then the second point that I wanted to make was identifying influencers, social media influencers. So I have 3 in particular that I love to follow. The first one is Gary Vaynerchuk. So he is VaynerMedia guru. So Ashley's nodding. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. I love his content. I love his energy. And he's definitely, his VaynerMedia is a consulting agency specifically for social media. And then he has Claude Silver working for him. She is their Chief Heart Officer, and I love her title. She's the Human Resources Officer. So she focuses on culture of the company and just being aware of emotional intelligence and these kind of things. So speaking of emotional intelligence, Brene Brown. So she's my third person that I follow quite a bit. So these are great people to follow their content and engage in interactions that you see on LinkedIn. They just keep it fresh and give a whole different perspective. They're in larger markets and they travel all over the world. So it's cool to hear their perspective. And then when you're talking about your personal brand, Gary Vaynerchuk actually quoted, "Your personal brand is your reputation, and your reputation in perpetuity is the foundation of your career." So when you're talking about your brand, it is your reputation. So it's really important to build that specifically on LinkedIn these days. And then because I am an HR person, I do have one thing as a side note, just as kind of a best practice. Given the heavy political times right now, and given that this is an upcoming presidential election season, it's a best practice to stay away from political content, just to make sure that you don't hurt anybody's feelings. So that was just my little HR plug for the day. So that's all.
Those are great things to think about when you're thinking about your profile. One thing I wanted to, before Ashely and Alla talk, which I don't know if Alla's going to be able to jump up here or not, but I do want to make sure that you guys connect with Alla on LinkedIn. She has a wonderful LinkedIn presence, the things that she puts on LinkedIn daily. She's helped my brand because I share her content. And so her profile's great to look at. And Ashely has created a beautiful brand for herself on LinkedIn. I just love everything she puts up, and I've learned so much from her as well. But you need to think about who looks at your LinkedIn profile, because I teach the technical people that work for me this often, and they seem kind of shocked when I say to them, you know, I share your LinkedIn profile with people all the time because they're on interview panels, and they may not realize that if they're not looking for a job, that their LinkedIn profile is still getting shared. Now, of course, if you're looking for a job, that's, you know, you want your LinkedIn profile to be what it needs to be. But there's other reasons that people look at your profile. Again, if you're involved in interviews, people look at your profile. People may look at your profile because they're just interested in your company. So there may be people that look at it, you know, that you would have no idea that they would even be looking at it. So it's important for that reason. I think that interns and people that are looking for mentors, if you know, they sometimes are looking for looking at profiles of people that work for companies that they are interested in working for. And I was trying to think. And also, I see that after networking events. So as you start going to these networking events, you'll notice that you introduce yourself to people, and then they may go straight back and connect with you on LinkedIn. That's a really good way to network. And so as you start doing that, your LinkedIn profile presence will be more important because people will be looking at your profile that way too. So I don't know if Alla's on the stage, but if she is, I was going to turn this over to her. Are you up here, Alla?
It says she was able to log in. Alex,
okay.
Can you help us? Oh.
They're working on it. Okay. Well, Ashely is going to show you some examples of some LinkedIn profiles and tell you a lot of things that lot of best practices. So I'm going to let Ashely turn it over to her.
Thank you so much. So like I mentioned earlier, branding, employer branding is really a passion of mine. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as well as, other social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok. I haven't really gotten on TikTok, but, from a professional setting, my focus is LinkedIn. Keep in mind though, thinking about all of those other social platforms, that's part of your brand, right? The Instagrams, the Twitters, the TikToks and so on. So just be cognizant of that. If there is something on Instagram or Facebook that you wouldn't like to share in a professional setting, make sure that your privacy settings are, up to snuff and, set for the appropriate setting. So I would just say that anything that's on the internet in general is your brand, right? But we're going to focus tonight on LinkedIn. So what I'll do is I'll share with you some profiles of professionals within the technology industry, and then one that's not in the technology industry, but I think also does a great job of building out her profile. First thing though, when building out your LinkedIn, think about, well, what is my overall goal? Is my goal to secure a new position? Is that within my field? Is that in a different field completely? I know it's so hard to break into a different field, but you can help do that by crafting your LinkedIn profile and your social presence in a certain way, right? You're a storyteller. What is the story that you are trying to tell? So is your goal to get a new position? Is your goal to simply network? Is your goal to, let's say, not get a new job? You're happy where you are, but you would love to serve on a board, right? You would love to be part of the CodeStalk Academy, right? So how do you craft that LinkedIn profile to tell the appropriate story? So think about what your overall goal is. Now, what I'll do is, like I said, I'll share some of these profiles. One thing to note is when I share them, they'll show up as a little box, and you just need to double click to expand that box. And I think Alex is also going to put that in the chat, but just so you are aware. Okay. I'm going to show you Miss Christine Jones's profile. She's one of our lovely panelists this evening. I think that she does a great job of showcasing some of her skill sets here. So in our About section, well, first off, let me go back to here. We have her title, Software Engineering Manager at Discovery. I'm a big fan of putting what your current title is, or the industry or the area that you're looking in, right? So if you are a software engineer, you could put software engineering professional, right? If you're looking to break into a new field, you could even put in, software engineering professional looking to break into marketing. So people know right off the bat exactly what you're looking for, exactly what you're interested in, right? You can also do that in the About section here. So, I like how she has given a brief summary of her skill sets and then some of the areas that she's truly specializes in, so that I don't have to go through and look at it. And again, I'm a recruiter, right? I'm a talent acquisition professional. So I'm looking at it from that perspective. I don't have to go through and say, well, now what areas is she truly proficient at, right? So here are some of the areas that she's very skilled in. Another thing that I like about this is she has some featured content here, right? That she was a presenter at CodeStalk in 2014. Here's, here's a deck that she helped work on. So then it gives me, again, another perspective of who she is. What is the content that she's passionate about? She served as a speaker, right? It shows that she's likely very confident speaking in a setting such as that. So I always advocate for sharing some of the content that you have created or worked on in a team setting. And again, I'll show you another example of that. Now here we have, experience, right? there's a couple of different ways that you can go about this. You can either go into listing what your positions are and putting in bulleted form what that is. You'll see that a lot. Or simply putting, the title. Again, it goes back to what is your overall goal. If your goal is to simply secure a position on a board or network, you might want to keep it short, sweet, to the point, what your titles are, right? Another area that, she's filled out here is the Women in Technology, how she's a member with this organization, includes a link. So say if, I'm looking to get more involved in, the technology scene in Knoxville, oh, Christine's in that, and I can click right here and learn more about that. And again, here's another area, like I mentioned earlier, adding in some information on projects that you might have worked on in the past. She's done that here. And then also added a couple of different bullet points on some of the main responsibilities that she had. Now, I know we only have a few minutes overall left in the panel discussion, so I'm kind of going to breeze through this. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section or in the chat section. So let's see, I see that even enlarging the image makes it really blurry. Can you read some of the descriptions aloud? Yeah, I can definitely do that. Well, one thing I do want to point out, okay, we've extended the panel. That's even better, right? One section I do want to point out is the recommendations section. This is such a great tool, guys. Focusing on that, you can hear all these lovely stories about Christine and the incredible work that she has done while at Discovery and other companies, and how she is such a joy to work with, right? It does go a long way, sometimes even the hiring managers that I work with will say, I don't really think I need to check references. Like, she had such glowing recommendations on LinkedIn, in just from speaking with her throughout this interview process. Again, I don't know if I totally agree with that, but it's just a perspective that I've seen with some hiring managers. Another great way to build out that LinkedIn profile is put the organizations that you're a part of, some of the awards and honors that you have gotten in the past, and then your interests, right? So, maybe I have an interest in Walt Disney Television, we can bond over our Walt Disney interests as well. But yeah, as Christine said, they sent a link. She sent a link to her profile in the chat box, and then she's happy to connect with anyone. Now, let me show you an example of a marketing professional. I know this is truly geared more towards technology professionals, but I thought that this could also be a good way to look at this. Now, Mary Ellen is a phenomenal person at Discovery. She worked in the New York office, so she's put her title there. One thing that I really like about hers is she's listed her personal website. I don't know if any of you out there are, let's say you're a UX designer, an ad product designer, anything in that kind of realm, or are you focused on technology, you have a GitHub, then you can put that information, put that website at the top of your LinkedIn profile, especially if you have taken the time to develop a website to feature some of the content that you've worked on, anything that you might have developed, some coding examples or anything like that. I think that's a great practice to share that. So featuring that at the top is always key. Now, Mary Ellen here, she's a marketing manager for emerging digital platforms. She's gone into a little bit more detail about what she does on a day-to-day basis. Launching Discovery's first direct-to-consumer service, Food Network Kitchens, spearheading creative strategy through element organization and delivery for site, paid print, so on and so forth. And again, I can share her profile in the chat feature. Within each of her positions, she's listed a PDF of some of the work that she did with that specific project. So it's a great way to get to know, again, what she's worked on in the past and to tell her story overall, right? So you'll see she did that for CBS in the several different roles that she had in an AMC as well. All right. Licenses and certifications are definitely key to include on your LinkedIn profile as well. You can put the credential ID on there as well for more information. And then, of course, in the volunteer section, fill that out. One thing that you can also do is fill in the skills and endorsement and then endorse other people and have people endorse you for various things. Now, people can endorse you for just about anything though. So that's a feature that you can turn on or off. So for example, it's again, how you want to brand yourself. So when I was focused on my career and being an HR business partner, a lot of people would endorse me for social media. That wasn't necessarily the image that I was trying to project at the time. And so I turned off my endorsements feature so that it would just show my skills as HR professional and, focusing on those types of skill sets. So again, it's what story do you want to tell? Ladies, do you guys have anything that you might add to that? I know Alla wasn't able to join. She's having some IT issues.
I would say one thing for when you're using it for branding, to make sure that you're being consistent across, what's on your resume, what's on your LinkedIn, what's on, if you're on GitHub or Twitter. I didn't mention Twitter, but Twitter is huge. If you're networking technology, I've been to national conferences and spoken to speakers and like, hey, I follow you on Twitter, which never stops being awkward. Because you're like, oh, I'm sorry, you now hear about my dog a lot. But things like that where you're getting in. So just make sure you're being consistent, particularly when you're talking about skills you have. That way, because people will notice discrepancies. And,
that's a great point.
For LinkedIn, telling the story where you want to go. I do a lot of volunteering in the tech community. I'm on the K-Tech Women in Tech panel. There's a Knoxville Women in Tech groups. I have that. I have stuff I've done with Palisippi. With Codestock or B-Side. So anything that you're volunteering with, even if you're just attending the stuff, you get it on there to show your community involvement. That's a big part of, showing where you are.
Yeah. And in terms of kind of what should I put on my LinkedIn, again, it all ties back to what story do you want to tell? Let's say if you're actively looking though for a new role, I like to make sure that my LinkedIn is very consistent with my resume. You can pull those bullet points and put them on your LinkedIn. So telling the same story, but again, as everyone knows, please tailor your resume for the opportunity. That can be difficult to do. So maybe having a general resume that you can pull those bullet points from and put them on your LinkedIn might be key. But again, I'll just say, please tailor your resume for the opportunity.
I can say the other thing is the path name. Oh, sorry. There. Okay. I think the other thing that, especially coming from a tech community that I use, and it's a detail, is changing the path name. So when I put it on my resume, it doesn't say like, my last name or my first name or whatever. It actually says solution leader or something different, so that people, it's kind of a techie kind of move, but at the same time, it shows a little attention to detail when you're actually using it to communicate outside.
Yep. And Adina, you bring up a good point. I saw your note in the chat feature suggesting branding your header image on LinkedIn versus using the standard LinkedIn options. Yes, please. Make it exciting, make it, part of your brand, right? You can be so creative in that realm. So, maybe you have an image on your personal website. You can, have that same image on your LinkedIn header, or some people a lot of times will use the company that they're currently working for. If you head on over to my LinkedIn profile, I can share the link to that. I have WarnerMedia and all of the talent that make up that particular brand. So it's a great way to brand yourself overall.
I think sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask Christine, for you guys, Christine and Christine, there's a good question about which connection requests you accept And I think if one of you guys that are in the tech community could answer that, do you have kind of a role?
I generally accept people that I've either met or could meet. Like if you send me a random thing and you live in Montana and you don't have any message, then I'm probably not going to accept it. But if I'm speaking at like Pellissippi, I always tell the students, hey, send me an invite. I'm happy to meet you. I'm happy to talk. So if you're in Knoxville and you have a description that's technology based, or in a message, if you say, hey, like I got a couple actually from people in here since I shared my link of, hey, I'm on the K-Tech event, I'd like to connect with you. I'll connect. It's I don't put anything super personal. I'm not going to put my home address on LinkedIn. I'm not going to put something that I wouldn't share. Like my Instagram is private. If you send me an Instagram invite, that might be a little weird. But like a LinkedIn invite, as long as it's, not spam, if you start sending me all kinds of weird spam, then maybe I'll remove you. But I think I've only deleted one person ever on LinkedIn. So you're pretty safe.
So as a cybersecurity and risk professional, I am very hesitant unless I am, if they're from Knoxville. So I always check their profile. And if they're foreign, I don't typically accept because of all the issues that come in with all the hacking or spamming. And then I also ensure that I at least know one person, or I have one connection to them. And like a school, they went to my alma mater, or they're in my field and we went to the same event, because I go to a lot of conferences as well. So I think those are the things that I look for. I typically just do a quick review of them. And the other thing is, I actually have never done the cleanup, but that's my next one. Sometimes I think going back to, you can't manage everyone. Sometimes I actually go in and think I need to take some of these people out because they don't meet kind of where I'm going or what I'm doing today. And the value is not really there to keep them in the Rolodex. So I think for me, I try to be I'm very skeptical as a cyber professional.
Advice. All right. One thing I was going to
talk to you, but Christine H won't.
So we talked a lot about different things you can put on your profile, and talking about Christine's profile, and she's putting things on there about the organization she's a part of, things like that. Another thought is that if you have content like presentations that you've put together that are shareable, that don't have personal or private company information in them, those are things that you can put on LinkedIn to share, to try to create, to differentiate yourself a little bit from other people that do the same thing as you. So think about how you can get creative with your brand too, with different things that you're a part of, a workshop that you even went to maybe, and you have the slides, and so you want to share those, or just any way you can get creative with your profile stands out. I've noticed that quite a bit.
I think that there's a good question in the Q&A. How would you recommend someone handle being laid off on, social, right? How do you handle that on LinkedIn? When should someone change their employment status on LinkedIn? It's tricky, right? I would say I would rather be transparent. Is soon as you're ready to start actively looking, start working on that brand, right? What story do you want to tell? Make sure that it's consistent, like we've talked about. Make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile filled out, as you do your resume, and then, put those dates in there, and then start networking socially, right? Through your social networks. So maybe you're looking for a job at ORNL. Say, oh, hey, Kate, you were a panelist on this board that, for this organizations that I just attended, reach out to your contacts that way. But you can also put a post out there, like looking for a great new opportunity in XYZ field. And so getting the word out that, hey, you're looking, reach out to your connections. Christine, I think you said, there's something you wanted to add.
I was going to say, having been there, and so I was off from Scripps when Discovery took over. And again, there was a lot of us. It's not a sore point or anything. One of the things that I found is the great thing about one, technology and being in IT, and also LinkedIn, is that I started to consult on the side. So those things can bridge the gap where I just did a small consulting gig. I wasn't really working, a whole bunch of hours, but you don't have to put that. It keeps your experience going. And I think the other thing you can use LinkedIn, again, to help build that brand either stronger or even flip it a little bit, is where you can post articles or you can post blogs. You can be seen as an expert in that field, even while you're not technically working or you're not published officially. But that's a good forum for you to put out your thoughts and really put together some well thought out ideas and conceptual work that you'd like to get involved with, or that you can show you're an expert in and you've done before. So I think LinkedIn has that opportunity while you're laid off. You can bridge some gaps. I mean, you see it all the time now where somebody's got, in my case, it would be like CH professionals or consultant. And it's really just me consulting. But I think that shows that you're still staying in the game and you're staying fresh.
And another way that you can use LinkedIn, my story, I was looking for a new position, and I noticed that WarnerMedia had a open opportunity for a recruiter position, right? Even though it said that it was in the Atlanta market, I still applied anyway. I hadn't heard back in a month or so. I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can find who the hiring manager might be by looking on LinkedIn. I reached out to 2 or 3 people who were in the talent acquisition group in the Atlanta office. One of them turned out to be the hiring manager. We struck up a conversation on LinkedIn, and she said, well, why don't we just hop on a phone call? I know you're looking for remote opportunities, but why don't we just talk anyway? One thing led to another, and here I am working for the company. So again, you never know. It's networking through different sites like that. But again, whenever you apply for a position, I would recommend going on LinkedIn or whatever social platform it is and seeing if you can identify who the recruiter is, who the hiring manager is, or who the leader is in that particular area. And you can just put a friendly, hey, just wanted to let you know I applied for this position. Put the position number that you applied for, because if you say, I just applied for this software engineering position, there could be 50 different software engineering positions at Discovery or ORNL or, so you want to make sure that you identify which position it is exactly. And then say, I'd love the opportunity to join your organization. I have attached my resume and my cover letter. And you can also put in there, top 3 reasons why you might be the perfect fit for this particular position, right? It's essentially a cover letter, but that's what you're doing. Any sort of communication to a hiring team, first communication to a hiring team is pretty much a cover letter, right? You're branding yourself for the first time.
Yeah, that's great advice. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add about if you are laid off? I know that there have been some of that has been going on with COVID and such. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add on the panel that you can think of about how to go about?
Yeah, I think you might hear my dog barking. Sorry, it's just a couple rooms over. But one thing I would add is that, it's all in how you message it. Hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity versus, hey, my boss is a jerk and they let me go. Like keeping in mind, yes, vent. Like I've been let go before too, during the economic downturn in 2008. It's all in how you message it. Like I'd tell my best friend, I'd call her and complain and be like, oh, this is terrible. What am I going to do? But then, what I'm putting on LinkedIn or what I'm putting on Twitter or what I'm putting on, Slack groups would be more like, hey, I'm looking for my new opportunity. Yeah, I'm disappointed, but this is what I have to offer, or I'm excited about something new. So kind of keep that in mind when you're putting something public. But I think it's people understand that, companies are, having layoffs, or they are having changes, or they are, moving. Sometimes when you have acquisitions, or when you have, just a company moves, that happens. And, in technology, that's going to happen. Like, I don't know many engineers that haven't been impacted at some point in their career, or security professionals or anyone. It's not, nobody's going to look at it and go, oh, Christine Jones, you were let go from this engineering job because of a layoff. You're clearly never going to get hired again. That's just not what the industry is like for technology jobs, or, really a lot of fields. But in technology, you kind of expect it. It happens. Startups go under, things happen. So it's all in how you do that. To Christine H's point, consulting is a great thing to do to kind of try new things or to put out there. And you may find that you love consulting. For some people, it's their dream job. So just in how, it's all in how you message it.
Well, I don't think we have any other questions that I can see. Do you guys see any questions that I have missed? Is there any?
There looks like there's one on how to answer the question of why did you leave your last position? That's always a fun one, right? Maybe you did have a jerk boss. Maybe, maybe you were laid off. Maybe, there's so many different variety of reasons. But you can always tailor that answer and answer in a tactful way by saying, I was looking for new opportunities to grow. There weren't the path that I was looking for wasn't available in the current company, and so this is the path that I'm looking to go down. Or there, there's a variety of different things that you can say. When it comes to layoffs, I would rather someone be transparent with me rather than beat around the bush. A lot of times you can see right through that. If someone's like, well, have your answer prepared, be ready to answer that, answer in a positive, as positively as you can, to just Teske's point. She put that in the chat. Gosh, there was something else that I was going to say. Sometimes it's helpful to understand the scope. So you said, well, I was laid off, that's one thing, right? But if you say, I was in a startup, unfortunately, we lost funding. So out of the 50 engineers that were tasked with this particular job, 47 of them were let go, rather than saying, well, I was let go, so really helping to explain your story, right? Explain the overall scope.
Does anybody have anything else on that? I definitely agree with keeping it positive as you can. But those were good points, Ashely. It is a tough one.
I was going to second the transparency. I mean, I'm a big fan of just being your authentic self. I feel like I can see through easily when someone's trying to fluff. And so, just being honest and genuine, and then, following that back up with what exactly you can offer. But it will work out. We deal with a lot. There are a lot of people in the market right now, but there's also a lot of jobs out there.
The other thing, if you can offer a reference from the company that you were laid off from, I think that can be helpful. Just makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. If you offer, you're welcome to speak to, my former boss or peer or team lead or something like that. I think that goes a long way too. And there's a question about cover letters. I'll speak to it quickly, and then if Kate and other recruiters would probably have something to. One thing I will say about cover letters, I love cover letters, but I would suggest that when you're applying for a position on a applicant tracking system, that you actually almost make the cover letter part of your resume, because in a lot of applicant tracking systems, they're two separate documents, and sometimes they get overlooked. And I almost think the cover letter can sometimes be more valuable than the resume as a recruiter. So I like to suggest that you just put that cover letter as part of your resume, and then when the recruiter looks at it, they get the cover letter first and then your resume. And then I do think you should tailor the cover letter to the job description that you're applying for, and try to know as much as you can about the actual job that you're applying for prior to writing that cover letter, and make sure it's specific, to the job you're applying for. What else, guys, would you suggest about cover letters?
I think to add to what Ashely said a while ago about to get into a new field, it makes sense, if your experience doesn't necessarily match just applied for, a cover letter can help explain where you're looking to go. And a lot of times if you're looking to get into another market, so if you live in Knoxville and you've applied for something in Atlanta, if you're not looking to be remote, they may say, well, why are you applying for this? A cover letter can help explain, I have family in Atlanta and I'm looking to get there. So it can help explain situations. As a recruiter, it's very rare that I read cover letters. The only time I honestly read them is if the resume doesn't make sense for what they applied for. So I'm hoping that it might explain it. So.
out that because I mean, we look at so many resumes. It's hard to read both the cover letter and the resume. I like Julianna's idea about tacking it on to the in the same doc. On the flip side, even though I may not read every cover letter, I do look to see if they submitted one because it shows that they're genuinely interested. They took the time to actually do that, and so I would say do it still. And the hiring managers like it, so I would say do it.
But not a generic cover letter either, because I do find I get frustrated with like a generic cover letter. If it's going to be generic, I wouldn't even bother. But if you can customize it towards that position, that company, try to say something creative in that cover letter. You can find those things on LinkedIn about the company or about the hiring manager or the team. Yeah, make it be creative. As
someone mentioned earlier, be aware of what you title cover letters or resumes. You know, if say you're applying for a software engineering job, and the title of your cover letter is software engineer ORNL, but you're applying at Team Health, you know, just make sure that you tailor that title, change the title, tailor your, you know, overall cover letter. I've seen that many times. Or when people will say, "Dear hiring manager, I'm excited to apply for the software engineering position at Discovery," but you're applying to Team Health, you know, or you know, they have the title of the job wrong. So you can tell it's more of a generic cover letter that they've just repurposed for that opportunity.
And it also makes it look like you're applying to a lot of positions. So yeah, you have to be careful for that.
Which you may be. You may be applying to a lot. Just don't make it obvious.
There's one thing, Julianna, I wanted to bring up, and that's because I help a lot of veterans. I'm a veteran, and I like to help transitioning veterans with their resumes or even their LinkedIn. And for everybody, though, be aware of any acronyms or when you start getting very specific to your job or your company and the lingo, make it very broad and just so people can understand what you did. Like I led a team of 5 and what you did. But I always try to tell anyone, don't get so specific that people can't understand or that you pigeonhole yourself. Like I only work SAP or I only do this one thing. And also stay away from acronyms, because if there's one thing I hate is I have to go look it up because I don't know what it is. And that just takes time. And I think people get frustrated when they can't read an actual sentence with what is that exactly?
Really good point. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. And if anybody on the panel has anything else they want to add, please feel free to jump in. But we would like to thank everybody for coming, and we would like to ask everybody to connect with us on LinkedIn. We're happy to, you know, share other advice that you have or the questions that you may have that you think of later, and would just love to connect with you after this. So thanks for coming. I'm going to turn it back over to Steph. I think she wants to say something real quick. She'll come up in a second. I'm not sure if the networking is going to continue at the tables or not. I think we only had 15 minutes before, so it may.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm here. All right. I love this format. So thank you, Alex. Through all of the tech drama and issues, you, I think I got like 70 chats from him. So I appreciate you staying on sarcasm. I appreciate you staying on top of it. Seriously. You guys did fantastic. Like I literally am like searching for pictures as you're talking to add to my profile and things. So really good advice. It's funny. So some of the things that stuck out to me is seriously do not bash your last company. So we had a guy, just to share a quick story with you. We had a guy we were in love with in a work sense, obviously, that we really wanted on our team. Like he was moving, he would have been moving here. We thought he was the perfect fit. We brought him in and had a dinner with him. And at the very end of the dinner, suddenly he started talking a little bit bad about his last company. And one of the things that appealed to us about him was the company he was coming from, because it was very similar to our company. So then the next day we kind of pushed on it a little bit, and lo and behold, the bashing just continued and got worse and worse and worse. He was the perfect fit for us, and we did not hire him because of how he disrespected his last company. So it's serious. It's a big deal. The other thing I would point out is, if, there were questions about, if I get laid off, how do I respond on LinkedIn? Getting laid off is a very emotional thing, right? It's a very traumatizing and mental game. It's hard to go through. Take a breath. Take a lot of breaths. Think through it before you take your voice to social media. So that's another piece of advice I'd give you. When you're adding comments to LinkedIn posts, when you're adding comments to Facebook, those things don't end. Even if you delete it, people take screenshots, people share it, you see it forever, and people are going to know you as that person that bashed the company you're coming from. So just be careful. Social media lives forever. So really good advice from this fantastic group of ladies. I definitely learned from it. I hope all of you guys learned from it. Thank you for coming. We're really excited for you to join a WIT event. We're going to continue some events in the future. We're trying to sort out the summer thing. A lot of people travel through the summer, so we want to make sure that we are thinking through the best timing for events. But I would ask you to go out and look at the KTech site. We have a lot of upcoming KTech events that are super exciting. It looks like Alex just shared one up on the screen coming up. Our virtual, so our KTech happy hour is coming up next week as well. So we look forward to seeing you guys there. Please reach out to us if you need anything. Lots of places to find us and get more information. Thank you for coming. You're going to now be spread back out to your tables if you want to wrap up any conversations you had started before the panel. But look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. I think Alex is talking on mute.
I hear you, Alex.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one thing that we've been doing lately is this is such a fantastic panel. So if we could get you guys to all smile, we'll take a screenshot and share it on LinkedIn, which is kind of the focus today. And then the chat will be over there. So if you guys want to chat and be included in the screenshot, you can do that as well. And then I'll hop off, everybody smile, and then we'll break back into the networking mode, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.